Aloha mai kako. You are watching Hawaii Political Reporter.
You, as a free, beautiful, independent human being with inalienable rights, own yourself. As a result, you can do what you want with your own body and own the product of your labor. The implication is that it is morally wrong to initiate force against someone else or their property, because to do so is to violate their rights. Therefore, all human interactions should be free of force, fraud, and coercion, and people should be free to exercise their rights, limited only by respect for the rights of others. When you learned don't hit and don't steal, it wasn't unless you work for the government. When you learned thou shalt not kill, it wasn't unless your dear leader gives you a gun and a uniform and a one-way ticket to the other side of the world. Government is force, an opinion with a gun, and force is a poor substitute for persuasion. Governments frighten us into thinking we need them, but with knowledge, philosophy, and technology, we are empowering ourselves and each other to have the courage to move past the paradigm of statism and restrain government to only moral uses of force, at least until we replace it with the cooperative, free market solutions that will soon render it obsolete.
Welcome back, friends. This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome to another important episode of The New World Next Week, where this week we're going to go over academic torrents and the Sochi Olympics. But we'll begin, James, with something that you and I were just discussing. Seems to have, it may not be leading in the papers and on the blogs, but it has the chatter. And that's ultimately, I think, what we try and get at here in a way, the forecast of New World Next Week. So, James, we'll begin with a piece from Zero Hedge as Harvard economist is pulling all of his money from Bank of America. A classical economist, Harvard professor, preaching to the world that one's money is not safe in the U.S. banking system due to Ben Bernanke's actions, and he's putting his withdrawal slip where his mouth is and pulling $1 million out of Bank of America. Now, this comes back to a piece that was originally posted by the banker in question, a guy named Terry Burnham. This was originally posted to PBS. Former Harvard economics professor, author of Mean Markets and Lizard Brains, longtime critic of the Federal Reserve, argues that the Fed's efforts to strengthen America's banks have perversely weakened them. And he begins his article by saying, quote, "Last week I had over $1 million in a checking account at Bank of America. Next week I will have 10,000. Why am I getting in line to take my money out of Bank of America? Because of Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen, who officially began her term as chairwoman on February 1st. There's also an interesting piece, James, from InfoWars. Harvard economist fears starting bank run on Bank of America by withdrawing his $1 million. Part of me leans to the side of let the heavens fall and ultimately let these banks fail, and we should all pull our money out. James?
Well, that's absolutely what should have been done in the wake of the 2007-2008 crisis. We should not have kept those banks on life support with the trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars of secret backdoor funding from the Federal Reserve, because that has only prolonged and inflated that problem and made it even worse. So it's going to come down on our heads at some point, and whether it comes down now or later, it is only going to be worse the longer we prolong it. So I do agree with you on that. And the point, I think, underlying this is that a banking system is only as strong as its weakest link, which really, in a fractional reserve banking system, that is public confidence itself. If there is no confidence in the banking system, there will be bank runs. If there are bank runs, the system will go under. And the FDIC in the United States might be there to say they'll support you to the $250,000. Oh, it's insured. Don't worry about that. But we all know what those promises are worth. They're not worth the paper they're written on. And we saw that in Cyprus with the bail-in regime, which, by the way, has been finalized, and there are backdoors that have been built into all of the banking systems through the Bank for International Settlements and its various tentacles in all of the various countries where it operates, that the bail-in regime is here, and it's absolutely, it could happen tomorrow in the United States if there was a big enough bank run or problem. So unfortunately, this is just one data point on a seemingly endless list of data points we could point to, whether it's the labor participation rate in the United States being the lowest in 35 years, or the CBO itself coming out and admitting that 2.5 million workers will be chopped out of the workforce over the next decade because of Obamacare, or whether it's the plunging Nikkei stock index here in Japan, or it's Chinese manufacturing shrinking in China, or whether it's Greece coming for its third bailout in the Eurozone, or whether it's South America and other developing emerging economies, currencies collapsing. There are so many data points to point to some very worrying signs on the economic road ahead, and I understand you have a couple of other stories that might tie into this as well.
I do. I think connect those data points to something that does really have people chattering. And I get this latest from the last 24 hours from RT. Financial world shaken by 4 bankers' apparent suicides in a week. The apparent suicide death of chief economist of a U.S. investment house brings the number of financial workers who have died allegedly by their own hand to 4 in the last week. And that's Mike Duker of Russell Investments, William Brocksmith of Deutsche Bank, Carl Slim of Tata Motors, and Gabriel McGee of JP Morgan, some in London, one in Washington State. So this has a lot of people wondering, again, all those points that you ran down, James, are these guys seeing that as well? Is this connected in some way? The most recent story, James, is, I think, a really interesting one that folks may not have caught wind of today. 9 die in Iron Mountain fire destroying Argentina bank archives. 9 first responders killed, 7 others injured as they battled a fire of unknown origin that destroyed an archive of corporate and banking industry documents in Argentina's capital on Wednesday. If you jump down to the bottom where Iron Mountain, the company's warehouse, you see their trucks here all over the states, will securely store your documents. We'll keep them, we'll shred them. We are your Iron Mountain. Tie in the connections to the report from Iron Mountain and all of those things. And you have a strange story. The company said, quote, "We will investigate the cause of the fire and work closely with local investigators, police, and fire authorities to understand what happened. The building was equipped with both fire detection as well as a sprinkler system," the company said, adding that it is contacting its customers whose documents were lost. And I can't help but think, hello, Nazis? Yeah, we destroyed all your paperwork. You guys don't have to worry. Hello, Jamie Dimon? You guys at JP Morgan? No sweat. It all burned up. Whoops.
Shades of WTC7, isn't it? Don't worry, we'll securely burn your documents for you.
It's a shock. And that actually, James, that story was told to us by one of the heads of the IT department at my job. He saw that story, knows the kind of work that we do, and immediately came over to us and was like, "I think this story's suspicious. You guys should check this out."
Well, I agree, and I hope if anyone out there has any more information on that, and especially the Argentinian banking system being what it is, I'm sure there are some skeletons that were safely disposed of in that fire.
Mm-hmm. So, James, we'll move to our second story this week, the one that has everybody chattering, and even the comedy podcast that I listened to today, the host made a joke about, in the Sochi Olympics, which everything I see tells me something horrible is going to happen on TV. So we'll take it from the New York Daily News. Why not, James? Toothpaste threatens Sochi Olympics while poisoned dogs, bad hotels, and the anti-gay row taint the games. The latest terror threat to the Sochi Olympic Games, toothpaste tubes packed with bomb-making materials. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security sent an advisory to airlines about the possibility of potential explosive components smuggled onto flights inside the thin tubes. The warning, delivered out of an abundance of caution, came a day before the gala opening ceremonies at an occult Olympics where everything we see is based on bizarre, strange rituals and, again, connected to the Nazis and their iconography. But DHS regularly shares relevant information with domestic and international partners, including those associated with international events such as the Sochi Olympics, a Homeland Security official told New York Daily News. Not aware of a specific threat at this time. You knew that was coming. But House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Michael McCaul, Republican out of Texas, told CNN the toothpaste threat intelligence was specific and credible. And Russian officials banned passengers last month from taking any liquids aboard flights headed for Sochi on the Black Sea. And, of course, the TSA here in America with the 3-ounce limit, which is complete garbage and selectively enforced, proven by the liquor that we brought through the last time we flew. James, that's, I think, really the key. And there's relateds that we'll post up about the poisoned dogs and all the bizarre things going on. And our man Brock West actually just a little bit ago posted a Sochi 2014 security update, kind of data dump to cyberspacewar.com, getting into all the threats, all the camouflage, all the digital surveillance, all the hacking, the Chechens, all of those things, James.
Well, you've used the term many times on Media Monarchy, paranoia, and this is it, and this is what it looks like, and we all know who it benefits and for what purpose. So I wouldn't be surprised if some Michael Chertoff ghoul or some other Skeletor would emerge from the closet next week with a toothpaste scanner company that is going to charge $100 million to scan toothpaste at each airport or something ridiculous like that. And I only say that halfway in jest because, of course, we all know what happened with the Christmas Day underwear bomber and all of that brouhaha. So, unfortunately, we know how this all plays out, and regardless of whether or not there is any type of terror incident, again, the terror industrial complex continues to grow on the back of all of this paranoia, and to a certain extent, I think even the alternative media plays into it when they focus so much on this, and there's going to be a false flag attack, there's going to be a false flag attack, just like the 2012 Olympics or any other number of events in recent years where millions of people were predicting all sorts of things, none of which came true. I think the point is that when events happen, like Boston Marathon bombing or what have you, yes, we have to be there to completely pick apart whatever they're trying to shove us down our throats in terms of an official narrative, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be feeding into that beforehand. So I don't know. I don't have any crystal ball. I don't know what is or isn't going to happen, but I do know that the terror industrial complex in the United States, in Russia, in every other country around the world continues to aggrandize and engross itself on the back of all this total over the top, I'll say it again, paranoia.
That's it, James. I think there's probably no other better way to put that. So again, I'm glad we've kind of at least sort of put that on the record here on New World Next Week, but ultimately it's the kind of big, grandiose show that you and I know is all sound and fury, tales told by fools and signifying nothing. Our third and final story this week, as we try and do sometimes, is give you a positive story, and we'll give it to you from our good friend on Twitter at GJ Salisbury. It's not only a positive story, but it's also a great resource. Academics launch torrent site to share papers and data. This comes via Torrent Freak. Researchers from the University of Massachusetts have launched a torrent site which allows academics to share papers and data sets. academictorrents.com provides researchers with a reliable and decentralized platform to share their work with peers as well as the rest of the world. The site currently indexes over 1.5 petabytes of data. One of the core pillars of academic research is sharing. By letting other researchers know what you do, ideas are criticized, improved upon, and extended. But unfortunately, it's not always easy for academics to share their work for a variety of reasons. So enter academictorrents.com, hoping to kind of change and challenge that status quo. The site was launched by Joseph Cohen and Henry Lowe, two PhD students working at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. The torrent site aims to provide academics with a cheap and decentralized platform. One of the goals, and this, I think, James, kind of cuts to the heart of it, is to give research back to the researchers instead of having it locked away behind paywalls. Currently, most of the top publications are being monetized by publishers, but with academic torrents, any journal could and can distribute papers for free. Academics or anyone else who's interested can join the site and start sharing. NASA's 42 gigabyte map of Mars might be a good start, or even a recent copy of Wikipedia might come in handy too. James?
Well, what sadder indictment of the academia itself, of academic institutions, could there be than the fact that they're now, a decade and a half behind the people who just wanted to download Hollywood movies or what have you in terms of utilizing this technology for distributing data. But at least they're finally catching up. So yes, this is a positive development. It is a good thing. And hopefully this will be the start of the crack in the wall that will lead to the opening up of this research that is currently being hidden behind these paywalls, despite the fact that taxpayers are footing the bill for most of it in the first place. So hopefully this is the beginning of some sort of open source type revolution in academia, although I'm not exactly holding my breath that this is the final crack in that wall to start the torrent coming through. Maybe that's where that phrase comes from. But anyway, yeah, I think it is a positive development. It is something that people should at least be checking into, and it is there are some interesting resources up there so far, and hopefully more to come. So this is an idea that's starting to creep through into every facet of our society, and finally into the hallowed walls, the ivory towers of academia itself.
Which is, in a way, kind of where the internet started. So I think that's a good full circle. And James, I think that's a great way to wrap this episode up.
Greetings, citizens of the world. 2013 was a year of awakening, once secret data was leaked, and the citizens of the world began to stand together. 2013 armed the general population with knowledge that if used correctly could truly change the world for the better. Now, as 2013 fades into the past, we enter a new chapter in human history. Though it may be hard for those with their eyes still closed to see, we've come so far and we're on course as a species to accomplish so much more. 2014 will be the year of planetary revolution. We enter this new year armed with the knowledge of countless generations that came before us. We can learn from the examples of over 10,000 years of organized human civilizations. The mistakes of our ancestors were lessons for their descendants, for us, as well as all generations to come. The time to restore the balance of power is now. Anonymous is but a reflection of you, the people. You must take action rather than waiting for others to do so. This year it's up to the people, you're all the key. You always have been. Peaceful revolution is still possible. That's why this year we are launching Project V. Make your voices heard, take to the streets, contact your state representatives. Let the leaders of your country know the people aren't satisfied with the current course the powers that be have set. Let them know that privacy, liberty, and general human rights do matter. Don't simply say how you're dissatisfied. Offer solutions for these issues to your political leaders. This year is what you make it to be, so make it damn good. Something to be proud of, when future generations look back on 2014. What do you want them to think about us and the choices we made? We have 12 months to change the world for the better, so let's make every moment count. We are anonymous, we are legion. We can and should forgive, yet we shall never forget. To those who wish to see peace fail in 2014, expect us.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided that the Nobel Peace Prize for 2009 is to be awarded to President Barack Obama.
Drone strikes in Pakistan, the surge in Afghanistan, the bombing of Libya, aiding terrorists in Syria, crippling sanctions on Iran, the Asia-Pacific pivot. Here in 2014, the Nobel Committee's 2009 decision to award Obama with a Peace Prize seems like some sort of sick joke. But then, to those who were warning that Obama was just a fresh face for the same oligarchical interests that Bush had served so well in the 8 years before him, the hope and change pandemonium of the 2008 selection cycle was always a sick joke. One look at the largest donors to Obama's campaign was enough to confirm exactly who he was working for, and exactly what type of hope and change the public could expect. So why did people believe in it so fervently? Surely wishful thinking played a role. A public that had just survived 8 years of Bush-era insanity could perhaps be forgiven for desiring change so desperately that they were willing to see it in Barack Obama, a clean slate upon which they could project whatever fantasies they wished. But the problem is deeper than that. As we examined last week on the Eye-Opener, the fraudulent left-right political divide has been used to keep the people divided against each other, even as it is used to dupe the public into supporting the very same political agenda through puppet administration after puppet administration. Perhaps nowhere is this process of divide and rule quite so transparent as it is in the so-called anti-war movement of the last decade. At the height of the Bush administration, scores gathered for protests, marches, rallies, and acts of civil disobedience to decry the acts of torture, abuse, and violence being perpetrated by the Pentagon in the name of the War on Terror. At the time, the movement was dismissed by the talking heads on the right side of the political aisle as being little more than an anti-Bush movement.
If we refuse to be silenced and frightened by the high-class thugs across Pennsylvania Avenue, if we stop being stereotypically good soldiers and good Americans, if we do what history demands in this critical hour, we can get our troops home now. We can put an end to the suffering and to the war crimes. We can begin to absolve our complicity, and we can give George Bush an accountability moment he will never forget.
As it turns out, they were largely right. After the election of Obama in 2008, the driving impetus of the anti-war movement evaporated. No longer did it matter that the wars, covert operations, military tribunals, and prison torture camps were continuing. In fact, it did not even matter that American military involvement escalated with the Obama handover, expanding into Pakistan and Yemen, involving more drone strikes and extrajudicial assassinations. This was, after all, a Democrat, and so many on the anti-war left were appeased. Groups like Veterans for Peace, which had so loudly and so admirably called for the impeachment of Bush for his participation in war crimes and atrocities, have been happy to look the other way while their guy in the White House forwards the very same agenda. Last year, I had the chance to talk to famed activist and writer Larry Pinkney, a veteran of the original Black Panther Party, about the process by which the anti-war movement was co-opted and ultimately squashed by the left-right political fraud.
You know, there were hundreds of thousands, if not more, people who righteously protested against the outrageous actions by the G.W. Bush regime. However, these same people, or many of them, if not most of them, have become deafeningly silent about not only what Obama has done in terms of carrying on these Bush-Cheney policies, but the fact that Obama has expanded these policies. And let me be specific. I'm talking specifically about the drone missiles where he's killing at will people in other countries at will, just killing them. And that includes infants, babies, women, children, men, old and young. I'm also talking about the NDAA section, provision 1021 of the NDAA, where Obama has the power to in fact kill U.S. citizens, which he has done, quite frankly, whether people know it or not. He's done it abroad. But he can kill them now, or kill us now, on U.S. soil. And probably it has been done before, but it has become legally codified by the Obama regime. And, you know, I'm just naming a few things as to the outrageous atrocities that this man this man and his minions, he's by no means alone, they are committing against everyday, ordinary people of this nation and of the world. So when we think of the NDAA, when we think of the kill list, his infamous kill list, every Tuesday deciding who am I going to kill today, when we think of the fact that Obama, approximately 5 years ago, most undeservedly received the Nobel Peace Prize. Think about that, folks, the Nobel Peace Prize, and yet he's a warmongering president, probably the most warmongering president that this nation has ever had. We need to get real. We need to be honest. We need to step out and say no more of this insanity.
As vexing as this endless cycle of left-wing and right-wing warmongering is, the sick joke is set to be played on the public yet again, and, what's worse, it seems to be working yet again. This time it's the Republicans who are pretending to play the role of savior, putting up a mock opposition to the worst abuses of Obama. There were protestations over the way Obama bypassed Congress to start the war in Libya. It is now official Republican platform policy to decry illegal NSA surveillance as an abrogation of fundamental rights. But come November 2016, after the next predetermined, rigged, phony American coronation spectacle plays itself out, and a man or woman with an R next to his name is inevitably installed in office, the Republicans will once again be fine with any level of presumed presidential authority, and the Democrats will once again pretend to be concerned about executive overreach. And the public, relieved to have thrown the rascals out yet again, will be content for another 4 or 8 years, until the next time they decide to throw out the rascals. And so history repeats, and repeats, and repeats, and repeats. And yet, there are reasons to believe that this time can be different. As Larry Pinkney highlighted last year, there are concrete steps that the public can take to help transition away from the left-right duopoly and toward a system where people collaborate and act in their shared interest against the wishes of the warmongering ruling class.
We begin with ourselves. We begin by understanding that the corporate stream media are nothing more than propaganda arms of the power elite of the system. We must, one, create our own everyday people's media. We must look to that media and not only look to it, but be an integral part of that everyday people's media. Tell our own story. In other words, tell our own narrative. Number two, we must do as Joe Hill, the famous activist, the late Joe Hill, many years ago, said, we must stop mourning. It's not about mourning and holding our heads down. Oh, God. No, it's about organizing. It's about reaching out to each other, dispensing with these fake left-right paradigm labels and struggling together collectively for our common interest as everyday ordinary people. My point is this, that we have to understand that the power and the responsibility for this insanity rests with us, everyday black, white, brown, red, and yellow people in this country and throughout Mother Earth, throughout the world. So those are two beginning points that we can do immediately. We don't have to wait for any. We can do that immediately because it begins with ourselves.
What's more, there is reason to believe that this is actually happening. No more stunning example of a genuine, grassroots, people's anti-war movement can be identified than the spontaneous mobilization we saw in the wake of the false flag chemical weapons attack in Syria last August. It was the grassroots alternative media that raised the alarm about the push to war and the US-British manipulation of intelligence to try to lay the blame for the attack on Assad's doorstep. It was mass mobilization and anti-war campaigning that derailed the war drive and forced Obama to back off from sending troops into yet another war theater. And it was this intense public backlash that ultimately shamed the administration into taking Putin's face-saving deal. Compared to the mass carnage that has been inflicted in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and elsewhere over the past decade, the aversion of the Syrian war may seem like a small victory, but it nonetheless is a victory and has to be recognized as such. The fact that NATO did not begin the bombing of Syria in 2013 may prove to be the beginning of a tidal change of resistance to the imperial, bankster-driven war agenda of the warmongers on the left and right sides of the phony political divide. Or it might turn out to be a momentary blip on the otherwise unimpeded journey toward a state of total war. The people might go back to their mainstream news, believing their mainstream lies, voting for their mainstream political parties, and thinking that as long as it's our guy in office, everything will be okay again. In the end, the choice is ours to make. But with war on Iran and a World War III scenario involving China and Russia looming on the horizon, the time to make that choice may be running out.
There's no more federal than Federal Express.
You try a hide and destroy a freedom. You seek agenda. We know you anti-American. You come pervert American Constitution. 1913, corrupt in the system. Devalue dollar, hyperinflation. The Federal Reserve, controlled by Lucifer. He can see you lying.